town's got a lot of cops. Damn, this town's got a lot of cops. But the story don't end there, okay?
My name is Heather Meadows, and I'm a police officer. I'm on patrol. I have been in law enforcement since June of 2000, which is when I started work for Sherwood. So this June will be 25 years. I worked for Sherwood for 16 years. The last 9 of those, I worked mainly crimes against women and children. And then I went to White County for 7.5 years and was the supervisor over their crimes against women and children division there. And then I came home. Sherwood's always been home. I was a single mom and I needed a job. And I remember, again, 25 years ago, I remember opening up the newspaper at the time and looking at the classifieds, and there was a really big advertisement for the Sherwood Police Department. They were hiring for dispatch detention. So I took the test, and that's what got me started. And law enforcement is not something I would have ever thought for myself, but it is most definitely something that I feel like this job finds you rather than the other way around. And so I just knew when I was here, it was just what I was meant to do. Well, I always tell these kids nowadays, we didn't have all the gizmos and gadgets back when you guys started. We didn't have cell phones. I had one young kid go, well, how did you call dispatch? I said, you went down to the local gas station and you used a payphone. You had change in your pocket. And he goes, what's a payphone? That's funny because I get teased for being the old person on the shift. So they joke about my first police car being a Flintstone police car. It had the holes in the bottom, which is kind of close. But well, as just working as a police officer, period, I think that I enjoy helping people and being able to empower those who need assistance finding their voice. And sometimes they just need support, figuring out their way and getting through a specific situation. And I like to be the one that is there to help guide them and support them through that journey. One of the things that led me to stick with law enforcement and to make it a career is I had a history of domestic violence, of being a victim of domestic violence. And so it was important to me to be able to get out there, and not only because I felt like I would be able to empathize with the victims and connect with the victims in a way that not every officer can. And I think that knowledge is key. So I was able to teach officers the correct way to respond to a domestic violence situation. Um, because sometimes they're not handled the way that they should be, not on the part of law enforcement, not meaning to. They don't mean to re-victimize a victim or to skip something that is essential. They want to help. They essentially want to help, but it's hard to empathize if it's something that you've never been a part of. And so to me, it was important to not only be there for the victims and help to guide them through their journey, but also be able to teach other officers as a field training officer and let them know the reason that victims of domestic violence or sexual assault respond the way they do. Because, everybody responds differently to trauma, but there's certain things out there that you could specifically look for to help empower them and essentially give them the support and the knowledge that they need at that time to be strong and to push through and to make that journey, but not to feel alone. I'd have to say a really challenging part of the job is sometimes people are not ready to help themselves. They're in a situation, sometimes a dangerous situation, and you know it and you see it, and it's very difficult to help them feel safe and empowered enough to take that stand and to stick to their guns and to seek out the help that they need or to help finish the process that is necessary to keep them safe. And so it's hard for me to sit back and know that I can't stay with them 24/7, and just knowing that they may potentially be staying in a volatile situation that could potentially lead to injury or even death. And it's very difficult to want to help somebody and to know that they may just not be there just to that point in their life. It's just good to be out there and be able to help guide them and to help them find their voice again, and it's a very rewarding part of my job. So it means a lot to me to be able to kind of bring that back full circle. I would say one of my most memorable moments in the 25 years is, so we had a child that had been kidnapped in Park Crest, which is now called the Retreat, but the babysitter had taken her and all of our leads had been exhausted. And so I had actually gone back out to speak to the family and had asked them a few questions. And one of the things that the mother had alluded to was that the babysitter had used her phone and had used it to speak to somebody. And so I asked if she would share that information with me. And so I actually reached out to that man, and he had a father that was a retired police officer in Chicago, and he had his father call me just to make sure everything was legitimate and that, we truly did need his help. And he did. He came through and he let us know that she was supposed to be meeting some people with the child that night, late that night in Little Rock. And so we were able to put up like an undercover sting, and we recovered the child. She was uninjured, and we were able to make an arrest, and it was a good, solid case. And so that was a good feeling to be able to put that baby back in her mama's arms. Was an excellent feeling. I love the city that I work for. Sherwood has always been home, and to me, keeping Sherwood safe is being able to not just give back to the community and to help, keep crime down. Our city has relatively low crime if you think about it. We're between Jacksonville and North Little Rock, and if you look at the crime statistics, Sherwood has sustained this long standing period where our crime is not anything like the others. And so that's something that I take a lot of pride in, and I think a large majority of that is due to the officers that Sherwood has working on the force, because there's some amazing men and women that work here, and they're my family just as much as the Sherwood citizens are. And so I'm really pleased to be here and to be able to give back. And I love that Sherwood citizens they spoil us. So I'm really blessed to work here, and they're very, for the most part, most of them are very pro law enforcement, and that just really warms my heart. One of the things that I think is super important about community engagement is knowledge is key. So when we have things like our community-oriented policing and problem-solving division, when they do things like neighborhood watches, and they're able to talk about home safety and personal safety, women's safety. I've taught a lot of women's safety classes over the years. I think that knowledge really helps to help crack down on crime and to lead to successful outcomes whenever a crime's been committed. And I think that it also helps to protect people overall, having that knowledge and being able to have that communication with law enforcement and learn how better to protect themselves, and it prevents them from becoming a victim of a crime. And so I think community engagement is very, very important. And it's also important for them to know that law enforcement, we're not here to hurt people. We don't go out there and just want to write a bunch of tickets and harm somebody. Almost all law enforcement officers got into this job because we wanted to help. We wanted to bring about change, and we wanted to keep people safe. And so, having that communication, I think, helps to not just prevent crime. I think that it promotes a positive image for law enforcement in a time where a lot of people may not have that. It's good for them to see us get out there and be human and interact with the community, and so that they know that, we care about them, and we're here to help. So Sherwood's got the community policing division, and obviously community policing is all about the community, and they'll get out there and they'll have different functions, and it's a lot about making contact with the public and shaking hands and saying hello and getting to know them, but also letting them know that there are resources out there available to them. And we've got the school resource officers, so they're in the schools, and they are always at the school functions, and keeping the kids safe. And so there's Night to Unite, and we have that in October, and it's where the community can come together, and you'll also have law enforcement, fire department, MIMS, so they're able to see all of the different people that are in the city that are here to help and provide resources, and to talk and chat and get to know everybody. And it's kind of like one big block party. It's a good time. I've been with Sherwood for, gosh, I got hired 25 years ago. So I would say over the years, Sherwood has really grown a lot, not only in size with the department, but one of the things that I've noticed is over the years, they've gotten a lot more conscientious as far as mental health of police officers goes. And that's a huge thing, because officers see a lot that they shouldn't be seeing. Your average person only has a few critical incidents in their year, whereas law enforcement has a lot. You get detectives, and they've even got even more than that. And so ultimately, it's important for there to be somebody that cares about the health and well-being, especially mental health of the law enforcement officers that we have working here, and that helps us to be better officers too. all around for the citizens. And so Sherwood's really cracked down on that, and there's a lot of resources available to us as police officers, and I for one really appreciate that. So a lot of people think that, that the police are out to get you, that like all we do is sit around and write tickets. And that breaks my heart because, obviously on my end, I see that there's so much more that goes into it. And it's not just about traffic stops and writing tickets. I see the officers that are out there and they're, you know, buying shoes for homeless, or feeding communities, and doing different outreach programs. We've got a lot of functions that we do with the Special Olympics to help raise money for Special Olympics. And there's so many people out here that their job is to keep the community safe, and they're working things that, like child abuse cases and homicides and robberies and aggravated assaults. And so much more goes into it. But I feel like a huge misconception is that people just see that. They just see the officers that are out there running traffic and running that enforcement. And I think that, nobody wants to get a ticket. So that can put you in a real bad mindset, ruin your day. And we know that. And so we try to give as many, if not more, warnings than anything, and just have that contact to try to make a good contact between law enforcement and the community. I know that a lot has changed over the past 25 years. We've got body cams that not only protect citizens but also protect law enforcement. I really, just based off my experience and really having only, used body cams in the last year, I would argue that I have seen them protect both citizens and police officers. But it's also a wonderful tool to have especially with like a crime scene, to be able to show something kind of in real life, and be able to scan and move and show dimensions that you would not normally get with a camera. Sometimes things are said and we didn't write it down in our notes and we missed it, or something to that extent, and we're able to go back and review our cameras. Now, citizens don't realize that we don't have access to those cameras. We can watch them, well, we can't change them, we can't edit them, we can't delete them, we can't take anything out. And so I've noticed, being on the street again, that there's a lot of people that want to record what's going on, and I tell them that that's fine, you're welcome to record, but so am I. And they always worry that mine is going to be edited or changed in some way, shape, or form. And so I just let them know that no, we don't have access to that. We can't do that. That's the whole purpose in being able to protect the integrity of that evidence, because that's exactly what it is evidence. We have different things out there, like we've got drones now. We didn't have those back when I started, and drones can be very helpful in a lot of different cases. Listen, we've had so much change in 25. I started when we were still putting pen to paper. Now everything's on computers and everything gets scanned, and it's like the world has just really changed over time. Technology has kind of taken over. We do stuff now that is online. People are scanning barcodes to get into court, to get signed up for court. And I mean, how cool is that? And you can pay for stuff online now instead of coming and of course, I'm an old school person, so I prefer that, person to person contact or whatever. But you got to change with the times, and that's, this new group of citizens. They're coming from a younger generation who is all about the internet and doing things on electronics and that sort of thing. So it's important for us to evolve with them and change. I would support anybody that wanted to go into law enforcement, and obviously in this day and age, it's difficult to find somebody that truly wants to be law enforcement, and it is a hard job all the way around anyway. And then times have really changed a lot. So my heart goes out to the people that are joining just now, and they're starting their career at a really difficult time for law enforcement. So I would just tell them that, be conscientious of being in good health. Strength is important, and, keep your mind in a good mindset. I would probably tell them to get a degree, to be honest with you, because that's going to help lead you throughout your career in the different divisions that you could potentially go to, or the types of departments that you might want to go work for, and that sort of thing. So if I was going to give anybody advice on that, I would probably tell them to, really focus on their education, and make sure that when they're coming into it, that they're also focused on their health and well-being.